this one is a banger. So we talked about desktop app, WebflowConf, code as the source of truth, all of that stuff. But I did not have time to do a proper teaser for you guys. Instead of that, you get a friendly reminder that if this is not the first episode you're watching, if you enjoy this stuff, maybe consider subscribing, following on whichever platform you are on. That would mean the world to me. Yeah, but that's all. Here's the episode. Okay, Nathan. So, a Webflow desktop app. What can you tell us? What do you know?
Well, so I can say that the teaser URL, which I think a lot of people have seen, shows like a screen, like a Mac desktop, and there's a little disk image, a little dock and everything. So it sort of spilled the beans, as it were, as far as like one of the upcoming things. And I think if you go to the Webflow wish list, you can sort by like most requested, or, like most voted thing. And I'm pretty sure like a desktop app has been the number one most voted for like 15 years or whatever it is. And so I don't know, why now necessarily. I can say, or at least I can link two things together, is number one, a lot of apps that otherwise would have been too difficult to develop are easier now with Electron. So like the Slacks of the world, the Asanas of the world, like you can take a website and make it an app much more easily than you could in years past. But more importantly, the article about code is the source of truth, where instead of having this abstraction layer, we'll talk more about that article and that initiative. Like if you're talking code, well, then I need access to your file system. So in the same way that in Claude, you have like regular Claude, and then you have Claude Code, like Claude Code only works in the Claude app. Like you can't just go to Claude.ai and use Claude Code because the browser doesn't have access to your file system. So in a similar way, if we're talking about, I now have code as a source of truth, and code that's truly portable, and code that the agents can write, or that I can write, or the code that I can import, long and short of it is I need access to your file system. So it's sort of like an obvious direction.
Yeah. And I was wondering, what can we do with a dedicated like desktop app? The file system, that's one thing, probably the biggest thing. But are there any other benefits that the desktop app may bring or could bring in theory if we played like that right now?
Well, I'll say this. One, are you familiar with the idea of malleable software, or malleable, depending on how you say it?
No, not really. Please explain.
Yeah, well, just like really configurable, right? Like, so it's like, it's not just I've locked in the UX and you have to use it this way. It's that I can sort of rearrange it to sort my needs, So it's, and you can kind of Google it or read more about it, but it's a trend I've seen the last like maybe year or two, and sort of accelerated by AI and agents, where I can take some software and I can sort of like, let's just say, for example, I'm using Microsoft Word, or, it's like, oh, I wish I had this feature that it doesn't have. Well, you could set up that tool in a way that I could like vibe code my own feature, like only for me, right? Like it's not like I'm going to change the code base, but like it's a new direction that a number of apps are going in. And we could list some examples of ones that are kind of doing this really well. But I think to your question, to your point, that this is sort of a new frontier where users can be more particular about configuring an app in a way that saves state for other users. And the most obvious example for web developers is there's always two pieces to this process. Take Webflow as it is now, right? Like there's a process, Janne, where you and I like set up the design system and the variables and the components, whatever, and then like we turn the whole thing over to our less technical clients to use in build mode or edit mode or whatever, right? So there's like a way that we use the software and a way that our clients use the software. And right now, Webflow has those two modes, right? Like there's build mode and there's edit mode. And they're great. Like they're, when we finally launched build mode and, page builder 4 years ago, whatever it was, 3 years ago, it was like way overdue, right? So it's like, I can just open up a page from a template. I can just drag some components. I can edit the prompts in those, click, man, like the vision of that is phenomenal, right? Like if it works, like, if you can get it to work right. So like fully realizing that vision, Janne, where like right now, when you switch from like designer mode to build mode or, marketer mode. I forget exactly how they call it, right? But like you can see all those icons, a bunch of them vanish in Webflow right now. Like you don't have access to like the apps, you don't have access to the navigator even or maybe I forget which one, and then if you go to edit mode, even fewer still. Like in edit mode, it's just like pages, assets, CMS. I think like just those three or whatever.
Probably,
but what if you could make that mode be anything that you wanted? And you could choose which of the Webflow icons in that left-hand panel were the ones that your clients got to use in the order that you wanted them. And even further, what if instead of only being limited to the ones that Webflow ships with, which right now are pages, components, variable, whatever, what if you could add your own new ones? So this is like malleable software where it's like, hey, Yanni, not only can you make Webflow work the way you want it to work as the builder, but when you turn it over to your client, who candidly will be using the site a lot more than, like we think of the life cycle of a website, your work might only be the first 3 months. And then that website now lives for 5 years, right? And then like you may not even touch it again if you do your work right. So like most of the life cycle of that website comes not in your interface with Webflow, but with your client's interface. And if you think that Webflow has historically indexed very heavily on the build side for you and me, and maybe has like historically underinvested in that handoff piece, because Webflow is for builders. But like it turns out that like actually most of the life of that website comes after your and my work is done. So how do we really serve that need? And a lot of the confusion and concern and tumult about Webflow's direction is not like we're abandoning builders. When we talk about agentic web marketing, the agentic nonsense, like just web marketing, it's just because most of the life of that website is after launch. It is the is like you're using it for whatever purpose you made it for. And so what if we could now invest equally in that, which is not only about the tools that your client has, but the tools we give you to get to set up the right, like more control over components, more control, like, and further, let's blue sky this. What if not even that you could create a mode, like the UX of Webflow for a user group, like 3 people. What if on an individual user level, you could say, you see these icons and you see these icons, like you could like your clients would be over the moon. Yeah. So all that said, this idea of malleable software to make both your work better and your clients happier, that's really hard to do in a SaaS app. But in a desktop app, it creates lots of possibilities for success that would be much harder to do in a pure kind of, and I don't think I've revealed too much because that's all just true, right? Like you can just do more in a desktop app. And so these are some of the, I think, key opportunities that a desktop, and plus you can do it offline, right? So you're on an airplane or whatever, that's fine. You can commit to Git on your local machine without an internet connection and then just deploy when you're ready, when you have a signal again. So yeah, you could keep working in like, as though it were like a local thing and then just deploy when you're ready kind of thing. So.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's all coming together. And I believe there was this article from Webflow made to measure about just this like malleable software thing.
Bingo.
And I was like trying to read into it and thinking like, what could this mean? But yeah, your explanation brought it together nicely. So it's all.
Well, you even said together at the top of the call, like what is about software that like we don't mold to it, but it molds to us. Like that, that's sort of at the heart of what we're talking about.
Okay, I'm getting excited. Before we forget, we have to do little intros. So my name is Janne Parri, and you're listening to Webflow and Friends podcast. And my guest today is Nathan Huening. So Nathan is a returning guest. The first episode got a great response, and now we're continuing our conversation from that. A little recap if you didn't catch the last talk we did. Nathan is on Webflow's enterprise team as a lead solutions engineer. He has worked with some of the biggest clients Webflow has. Last time we talked about AI and Webflow Enterprise. Those topics will definitely be present in this conversation too. But before we go to those and WebflowConf and source of truth and so on, Nathan, how are you doing? And are there any updates, personal or work related, since we last talked that we should know about?
I did get a promotion, so not a lead solutions engineer, now a principal, which is, it's all just fun and games, right? I never really cared about any of that. I joke with, I did a podcast with Mason Poe from Edgar Allan, and he was kind of like, we're talking about, like these future goals. And it's like, Mason, I don't have anything to sell. I have no community to influence. I have no career ambitions. like it's all just easy, when you don't really have I kind of find myself stumbling into opportunities, which I'm eternally grateful for, like being at Webflow and working with this team and this company and this product has been one of the like great pleasures and blessings of my life. And so it's amazing to be like, you've heard the expression where it's like, if you're the smartest person in the room, find another room. Like Webflow is the first place where I'm like the dumbest person in every meeting. like my colleagues come from, like Apple and Dropbox and Slack and, like they're just super achievers. And it's just like really, really a treat to get to work with like smart, talented, creative driven people who are really, really trying hard. And, and that's part of the, I think, thing with like Ben Hafela is our new CPO. Terrific, by the way. I'm really, really glad to see him take the reins. Like when he sort of, I wouldn't say like admitted, but like acknowledge that the technology decisions from 15 years ago that were a net benefit to Webflow have now become a liability. This translation layer of like the Webflow you talked about in the article, right? Which has I think historically made it hard to update the product as fast as we would like, but also now in the like agentic world is really slowing us down. I think like it's you see how hard people work and how personally they take the feedback from the community and things like this. And so it's like I'm really grateful to see some new commitment internally to like we're really gonna hit the gas as much as we can. And so there's going to be a whole, I think, review, of just like let's look at the last 18 months of like what we shipped and kind of like some major things, some minor kind of quality of life updates. But I think there's even a sense that like, okay, like you might have seen some of the most recent updates, like you can now like the attributes, like pacing attributes now, we'll split it up and like you can rearrange really, really small things, even like grouping CMS fields, which I think the last time we spoke hadn't been released yet. Yeah. It's like, I've been waiting 7 years for this or whatever, So anyway, all that said, there's, I think like a new life, in the company and it's hard for everybody right now, right? Like a lot of just uncertainty and chaos and things, but it's been fun to work in a context like because this is when a person's work can really make the biggest impact. When like everything is just in total chaos, that's when you can kind of like really make a difference. And so it's been a real joy.
Yeah. Let's like hone in on this subject, like getting to the source. There's the article, people have reacted to it. I talked with Dan Foster about that, but I want to know like the insider view. What do you think of the article and the declaration of direction, if you may? Like, what do you think of all that? And is there a big buzz within Webflow?
What do you think about it? And let me hear that first, and then I'll chime in. Yeah. What's your impression overall? Yeah.
I'm like cautiously excited about this. Like, it's great that Webflow has noticed this, and obviously it has to be like a big lift, but towards the better. And it's a big move that I believe has to be done. So that's great. I'm just like waiting. What will that look like physically the UI in my workflow and so on. So I'm waiting for the conf and something concrete to see, but I'm like cautiously optimistic, excited, and also wishing it would be here sooner than later.
Yeah, it's gonna take a while to get right. So yeah, it'll be no reduction or diminution of investment, in the core Webflow. Like again, some of these updates that we're seeing, we're going to continue to see these, and so I think it'll be interesting to see. I am also cautiously optimistic. I think there's an opportunity to really stick the landing here. And in our last call, I gave the example of like the Doctor Strange, like the 1 out of 50 million. Like
Yeah.
there is a future where we thread this needle and produce something really extraordinary. Um, and we've got really smart people working on it at all, like as fast as they can, right, to try and get this out and some of this new direction. But what it seems to me like for the viewers or developers who remember the early days of Webflow, so like Webflow officially founded in like 2013, and then CMS came in 2015, and but I remember those days, and I remember how laborious it was to code by hand, and how much it seemed like Webflow itself was a revelation. It was just like, oh my God, I can like so much faster. And whatever Vlad's original vision of superpowers for everyone, where it's like, hey, you want to make a website now, you can make it. Learning Webflow is still a lift. Let's just be candid. Like if you commit to this one-to-one abstraction of core web primitive, then you still got to learn Flexbox. You still have to understand media queries and the inheritance, and so either you are someone who wants to learn web development and use Webflow to get you there, and a lot of people did that, especially with Web3 University, or you're an existing developer who has now, candidly, I've been ruined forever. Like even before AI, I was not writing code by hand anymore. I'm just going to use Webflow, right? But at the time, there's a lot of people, like a lot of tools. Like Webflow was not the only no-code builder. There's an explosion of these tools. Like there's lots of them. I used Macaw. Macaw at the time was the largest Kickstarter funded project in the history of Kickstarter. Was subsequently acquired by InVision, and I think was incorporated in other products and sunset or whatever. But like Squarespace emerged. I mean, that's a no-code website. It's a different approach than Webflow, but it's the same idea of like, you don't need to do this. So but like whatever Vlad's original vision, what Webflow became was a tool for professionals. Again, like we talked about, not a tool for making websites, but a tool for people who make websites for other people. And so I think what we'll see though is in the same way that there was like an explosion of tools to kind of meet this market need, and a lot of them you won't even remember their names anymore, and Webflow emerged. And we can talk about why Webflow did more than some of these others. Like it seems like it could have been any of them. I have my own theories on that, but like it feels the same way right now, like 2026 and 2013. So it's like there's like an explosion of these tools. And I have a list in Slack, like in our company Slack, of like 35, like, Ship Studio and Noon Design, and like, I mean, just all these like agentic building tools, some of which are exceptional. Opacity is coming out, and that's, more like Figma adjacent, but like, so, Lovable, Bolt, Replit. I mean, we can go on and on about all these, V0, Nordcraft even, but I think that in a similar way, the dust will settle and like a couple of these will emerge in a very similar way, for, again, maybe whatever historical reasons. And I feel like it's like Webflow gets to be the upstart again, right? Like it's not just like an incumbent. It's like, oh, we have to compete to be the best tool, not just the tool that everyone uses or always has used. And our new VP of engineering, Utkarsh, which you might have seen him, he's really active on like Twitter and socials and stuff. He used this phrase on a call the other day where it's like, we want to be a magnet, not a moat. So it's like, we want you to use Webflow and Webflow's tooling because you love it and it's the best one, not because you're like locked in to our hosting or CMS or whatever. Like it should, and the only way to really do that is to let you choose your own. Like if you can choose Webflow among, like, what if there were a world and, it's just like, well, okay, I have my Webflow thing. And it's like, now I need to use a CMS or use a hosting. What if I want to use Webflow, or what if I want to use Vercel? Like at that point, now you're competing on, are you the better host? And then you get those done.
Yeah.
And then, so it's like, there's a world where we sort of are like, how do we really be the best, and what does the best mean now that people have whatever? But I think this core thing too is that because the build process, which was so difficult before Webflow in 2013, again, I was coding by hand for 15 years before web, and now that and Webflow made it easier, but still hard, right? Like still a lift. Now that with AI and agents has dropped to zero, to nothing. Like the value in the build is nothing, but like when you launch and you go like still the deployment, you can't just like like we talked about that handoff. You can't just hand your client, okay, open up Claude and just like vibe some new components. Like it will be disaster. Like they're going to completely destroy the whole site. Like they still need some harness, some framework to do their work that isn't being provided by anyone. And so it's like, can Webflow employ or the same quality of tooling that historically has marked its build, maintain that, improve on it, and then also provide sort of like a best in class client experience? Because that's how you're going to keep your business, Yame, is like that handoff, right? Like you get to really dial in exactly their workflow that's unique to that website and those tasks. So for in my view, and I would say that part of the company's view is, in a world where the build, which has historically been Webflow's core value proposition, drops to almost zero, then where does the value shift to? And so I think that's like a new opportunity.
And it was the kind of like second article, the one after getting to the source. I do not remember the title. It was something we heard here.
Measure something, was it?
No, that's the third. But the one before that was just about like what comes after the build part, like
right, building for what's next.
The values there,
Right.
So yeah, that was all about it. I find that I have never been reading those Webflow articles like this thoroughly. Trying to, you said that expression, read the tea leaves of what is like coming. So that is exciting.
What but one little phrase means,
Yeah, there were multiple things, but one little tea leaf in the getting to the source article said something about like openness and portability regards to like code. So could we get like more open environments in a sense that it would be easier to export code out of Webflow and into Webflow, and it would be easier to switch platforms if one wishes? I would imagine if the code is the source of truth, that would be so. But what do you read on that?
Yeah, well, tell me, what would be if you could wave a magic wand and just make a Webflow workflow however you'd want it to be, how would you want it to be and why?
Yeah, it's difficult. Like I can wave all sorts of theoretical wands, but I haven't tested this. So I would imagine there would be one where the build process would be like super open. Like if in the middle of a build, I would like to change a platform, I could do that, and all the like whatever files my build like comes easily with that, and then at some point I could like attach whatever hosting, whatever like apps or features, if you may, to that. So that would be cool, but that would also mean that there's not a lot of like business case within that build part if it was so open. I guess it comes down to like the agents and like the build UI, a little bit of like CMS. If those, I can just choose whatever I want to use with those, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think there's a world where like right now we have Optimize, Webflow Optimize, which again, I stand by my view that of all the testing and personalization tools in the world, I think it's the best. And there's a number of reasons why I think that. Like if you've used Optimizely, if you've used VWO, if you've used Mutiny or AB Tasty or any, there's dozens of these, right? When Webflow acquired Intellimize, sort of had our pick, right, of any of these, right, and picked what in my view was the best one, right? Now it still remains a standalone tool. Like you can still use it with WordPress, with Adobe, with Sitecore, whatever. If you use it in the Webflow context, like the integrated version offers some cool advantages that the standalone doesn't. And part of my work as a solutions engineer is to talk about like, well, yeah, like if you switch to Webflow and want to do this, like these are the advantages that you get. I mean, just working with components, for example, or like you can run a test on a component, like an A/B test. And if this were any other tool, it would only be that one element on that one page, which is fine. But now you're just limited to the traffic of that one page. But like the integrated version, if I run the test on the component, now anywhere that component appears, say it's navigation, across 50,000 pages, means I'm now running that test on all 50,000. So I can get to statistical significance in a fraction of the time because now I've got so much more traffic to those pages. And so again, I only do the test in one place. I don't have to do it 50,000 times. Any other tool, you'd have to run that test 50,000 on each of those different, right? So again, this is my job, right? Is like, what does this advantage entail? So if you want it to be in the Webflow ecosystem, like in the Webflow, then pay for it. But if you don't want it, you should still be able to use it. So like you don't need to re-platform to use Webflow Optimize. You can still just use it right now on your other site. And when I'm talking with people who are like, I love this, you're saying I have to switch over my CI/CD pipeline. I have to switch over my hosting. I have to switch over my, I don't have, it's like, it's a big ask to be like, I need you to completely change everything and re-platform to Webflow to get access to our localization or whatever. But what if, like Optimize, our localization tool, which again, I think is like among the best in the world, what if you didn't have to, right now you have to switch to Webflow if you want to use our localization. And it was just because it was built to be integrated from the very beginning. But what if you could just use localization? What if you could just use our analyze tool? What if you could just use our hosting or not? What if you could just use our CMS or not? So the idea that now you can assemble the right workflow from the core technologies, and the reason why you would choose Webflow is because you don't have to, but they're the best. So this is the world that like and take Lovable, for example. I'm a huge fan of Lovable, the company Lovable, the product. I think talking about this explosion of this, Cambrian explosion of I don't know how much you know about, ancient history, but like, periodically in Earth's history, animals try out all different kinds of body types and most of them fail. Like a few of them, natural selection is like, oh yeah, 4 feet, instead of 6 legs, 4 legs is better or what, So there's like an explosion of these. And I think Lovable is going to emerge for specific predictable reasons. And I think Webflow is going to emerge again for specific predictable reasons. And like Lovable is taking a different approach. But to your point about portability, I have, I don't know, a half dozen apps that I'm working on in Lovable. It's a pleasure to use. And believe me, a lot of Webflow people use all the tools because we like, what's out there? What are they doing well? What can we learn?
Yeah.
But me personally, everything that I do, it just writes to GitHub. It's just React. Like if I decided tomorrow I don't want to use Lovable anymore, I just connect that repo to something else. And it can just read that code and act on it. So why should Webflow be any different? Like if that's what's an option for you, Webflow goes extinct. So the idea that code as the source of truth means that you should be able to ingest code and act on it and write it. You should be able to export it and act on it and write it. And candidly, you'd have to, because if you were going to use a Webflow agent that's built in, again, use Webflow's agent if it's better or if it's cheaper. And if it's not, then bring your own. But that agent needs to be able to act on that code, which means nobody can own that. Like it has to just be React or Next or Astro or HTML or whatever it is, So it's like, if you want to really win, then you commit to being the best, not because you have to be locked in or whatever. So I see an inversion of there is a world potentially where you choose Webflow and you can choose it piecemeal with your project. And then if you want it all, great. Well, then you can pay for it.
Yeah. That is exciting. That kind of blew my mind. Like instead of starting with the build, like mandatory step and opening all these like other features, you could go totally different routes, like pick up everything but the build and do the build part somewhere else if you wish, and just choose, like, as you said, localize, optimize, whatever other things, because they are the ones you want to pick And as you said, like that would mean that all of those things you pick probably because they are the best or best fit for your workflow. So
which also means, think about it too, like as it is right now, think of all of the people who might otherwise be choosing our analyze tool or our localization tool or our CMS that can't or don't because it's like locked into Webflow. So, and theoretically you can, like, again, like the fact that I can sell Optimize to non-Webflow customers is amazing. We do great business selling, because for them, it's just like, well, I don't need to re-platform. I just need a testing and personalization tool I can run on top of, right? And so it's like, what if you could unlock more of that value? Makes my job a lot harder, but it's good for the bottom line.
Yeah, what was that? You need some more enablement? Was that the
good?
thing?
Yeah, what a great memory you have. Yeah, man, and we are going to launch so much. I obviously can't tell you, but like this is going to be a conf for the ages. There's some real. I just saw earlier today some of the preview, like the keynote preview and stuff. I'm like, holy smokes, this is going to be a real big one. So.
Oh man, I'm getting FOMO since I cannot be there in person. I will be online obviously, but
yeah,
so many people have asked
we'll miss
me.
you.
Yeah. You can have a silent moment for me or something like
that. We'll dial you in at some point just so we can,
Yeah, did you see that? Okay, yeah. But about WebflowConf, like, are you excited? Are people excited? Is there like? I feel like, as many have said, that there's kind of like pressure to deliver in this conf more than there has been. So, do people like inside Webflow feel that same thing?
Yes.
And what do you think?
100%. Yes, the everyone knows the stakes. Yeah, and even like. So I don't even know Ollie McMillan. I don't know if you've had him on one of your calls. He's a top designer and an ace and just a lovely fellow. He mentioned that he was like sort of on the fence, wasn't going to go, and then read the Getting to the Source article and then booked his ticket. So he was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna see where this takes me. So I feel like that's sort of the vibe, right now. So we'll see. I'll be there. I'm glad not everybody in the company gets to go because there's only so many seats, and every seat that a Webflower takes is one less that like a community member or client or customer or whatever can do, or partner or something. So I'm grateful to get a chance to go.
Yeah. And since you have seen the keynote, or at least drafts, like, I obviously have to ask, well, what is on that? You might not be able to say that, but
of course you have to ask. And of course I can't answer, but I'll just say, like, there's, so you'll learn about, I have to really be careful. Yeah. I think you'll see what we've been up to.
Beautiful.
In terms of the way that we're thinking about the product, the way that we're thinking about the future, some of the new capabilities that we see. I will say that, like, there's going to be like a lot of like long-standing frustrations, complaints.
Beautiful.
That will be directly addressed, which is not overstepping, I think. But and I think more than the specific updates or features, it is sort of like we want to build confidence in our partners, in our community, in our like regain some of the trust. It's hard to build and easy to squander, and so sort of like a signal that, like, we are recommitting, doubling down to try and make the best product that we can. And I think there's, like, I was thinking about this actually today or earlier, just as far as like what we might talk about, and I think that there's I'll if you'll indulge me for a moment on a brief detour.
Bring it on.
Why like talking about that explosion of tools in 2013 and the explosion of tools this year, and how the dust settles and winners emerge. And I was thinking about Webflow, and I mentioned this on the last call, but I'm going to go a step further. And I said that, like, I think that Vlad's own decency and humanity, like his fundamental goodness, it's not like I'm here to like make money or what, like I'm trying to like put a dent in the universe, to use Steve Jobs' phrase. And so I think that there's something, like, I believe in, like, the metaphysical, right? Like to quote Morpheus from the Matrix, is something real just because you can smell and taste and touch it. I think there's things that are real beyond just the physical senses. And again, and why I say that is, like, Webflow always like smelled a little different to me in terms of just like, the
Yeah.
company and I don't know that I can put like my finger on exactly what that is. And you can believe in that or not believe in it. Maybe I don't entirely either, but like, I just feel like you sort of get a feel for a company, a product that's sort of ineffable, like a little hard to put your finger on. And the reason I say this is like early in my career, I was really trying to understand the difference between art and design. Like, are they the same thing? Are they separate things? Like trying to get a sense of, do I want to be an artist or do I want to be a graphic designer, like, technologist or whatever. And I finally, about a decade in, I finally realized that like art exists to challenge you, to get you to think about the world in a new way, to grow in awareness. Like you've had some experience or insight or enlightenment or trauma, and you want to express that. Like it could be an insight, or it could be like, Taylor Swift just broke up with a boy and she's going to make a great album out of it. Like art's a great way to process your emotions, right? So art is about disrupting things, and design is entirely different. It's about efficiency and optimization, and like, how do we move 50,000 people from point A to point B during rush hour in this one city, or like urban design, right? Like, so they handle very different things. And the most succinct way that I think about the difference between art and design is that the purpose of art is to ask questions, and the purpose of design is to answer them. So they operate in two fundamentally different spheres.
Okay.
But when you think about answering questions like what is the most efficient or effective way to something, like design is about the fewest number of brushstrokes to achieve something, whereas art is like, use as many brushstrokes as you want, doesn't matter, whatever it is. So if you're trying to solve problems with design, that's one level of it, but there's more to it. And this, I promise I'm getting somewhere with this, that one of my favorite designers was a lawyer by training and left his legal practice to become a typographer. His name is Matthew Butterick. He was so frustrated with the fonts that lawyers would use in their documents that he was like, I'm going to make a better font. He has 3 or 4 of them he sells on his Type Foundry. But I saw him give a talk one time, and something he said really stuck with me. This was 10 years ago, maybe. He said, the lowest form of design is solving problems. So like solving problems is the lowest form of design, but investing your humanity is the highest. And I think about that too, because like a lot of the things we're talking about is like, what is the point of all this? And I think there's a certain kind of like, keep your eye on the ball, where it's not just like, I want to give you tools to do something effectively. It's like, I want your humanity to find its expression. I want this product to reflect the humanity of the people that created it. And I feel this anytime I drive like a German car, right? Like I love Volkswagens, I love Audis. Like I look at the symmetry of it. I look at like, I was like, how would I do this? And I'll flip it. There was like some human anticipated my need a decade earlier when they designed this vehicle, and thought that if I would reach for this sun visor, it would just be right there and would work, and so like in that moment, I felt that person, like I communed with them across time and space, like somebody considered me in product design. And so I think the opportunity here is like, again, why Webflow emerged then is I think of all the tools that are emerging, I think like this is an opportunity for us to like invest our humanity. Like, what does it mean to meet the moment in a real way, and to bend the technology opportunities of the moment to creating something really extraordinary. So I think that's why I feel like Webflow will again emerge in the way that it did, more than a decade ago, is because it's like that the conditions are the same. Like history may not repeat, but it rhymes. And that's to answer your question about how I feel about these articles in this direction. Like that's sort of the way I feel.
Yeah. That's beautiful, and that's like reassuring. And all the things about the openness and like all the features being like open to other platforms, that's also like reassuring. But that's the thing. I always come here and talk with like community members, and I get a lift up, and then I go to social media, and there's some dude again saying that he's no longer using Webflow, and that gets me down, and I'm like in constant like switch.
Yeah, it's fine. If Webflow is not meeting your needs and you find a tool that you like using better and that meets your needs better, then you should go use that tool. Like that's the market speaking, right? So it's like, to me, it's, and again, like the whole like, breakup with Webflow posts is profoundly irritating and self-serving. Like, it's like, dude, if you don't like it, just go use something else. It's like, nobody needs to, like, it's for like, it's, some products are for you and some products aren't for you. And that's fine. Like, be like, oh, let me tell you about how I hate my BMW and I bought a Mercedes. It's like, dude, if you like BMW, buy the Mercedes. Nobody cares. Nobody needs to hear about it. But it's again, it's like, is it the best tool? Is it solving the right problems? And I don't think it's right or wrong. I think it's just Webflow is like a, I don't say consequence, but like is subject to the time in which it emerged, and is sort of bound by the technology considerations of the time. And so I think it's sort of like, because of how much all there's like new products and new kinds of tools and things, it's sort of like, okay, well, cool, let's put our hat in the ring. Let's see how what would a Webflow flavor, like a Webflow version of this look like? And maybe it'll look a lot like some other tools, or maybe it'll look completely different, or I don't know, maybe it'll just be one among many. We'll see. We'll know about this time next year, like how it all plays out. But
Yeah,
but
totally.
I'm excited about it. Like, when I see it, I'm like, this is a tool that I would wake up early on a Saturday morning and use to make something fun. Like, that's my metric anyway.
Yeah, yeah. I have so much like mixed feelings about these things, as do probably all. But like, I'm not against like progress and trying out all of the new tools, but at times I feel like AI pushes us towards just speed. Like, everything is about speed. Like, speed of building is a big thing, and maybe to the point that even clients just want like somewhat speedy experimentation, and not like thinking of the craft in itself. They want to try out new stuff and not be left behind, whatever that means. And that might come with the risk of one speedy experimentation just being left as a company front on whatever page or whatever app and so on. So I'm not sure. Speed is obviously a good thing as long as the quality is there too, but I'm not sure if like people are bringing up the quality with the speed at this point. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, and it's tricky, because I feel like everything you just said, I could have heard someone say on a podcast in 2009. Yeah, it's just like, yes, of course, all they care about is speed, and like, it's just like, most of your clients are not gonna care about quality. Like, there's a reason why more people eat at McDonald's than any other restaurant in the world. Like, it's because they don't care about quality.
Yeah.
They just care, but there's still plenty of good burger restaurants in my town. And so you're not going to achieve a certain level of scale, and like, you're going to appeal to the people that you appeal to. And so the goal is to like find the people who care about what you care about. And that's hard, but that maybe is more of the work itself than your work. And the idea that, like, I remember in 2009, 2010, the iPhone had been out like 3 years, and I was working as a front end developer then, and I'm just like, wait, now I have to make two websites? I have to do the desktop one, and I have to, but you're only paying me for one? I was like, no, you're going to pay twice, whatever. And you think that went very far, Jan? So it's just like, they're always going to be asking you for like more things, like more, less, whatever. And so, but I'm reminded of this old TV commercial of this Italian company, Pirelli Tires. I don't know if you know Pirelli Tires.
Yeah.
They're like famous for like high performance, like Porsche and Ferrari, whatever. And like, I remember their tagline in the commercial was, because they had like, their commercial was like, Ferraris zipping around a track or whatever. And it was like, power is nothing without control. I was like, I don't care how fast your
Yeah.
Ferrari is, if it slides off the road, so that's where sort of like, okay, I don't care how fast it is if you don't have control, if you don't have, brand consistency, if brand drift's a real deal. But it also, it's hard. It's like, you pick your clients as much as they pick you. And we talked last time about like, brochure sites versus revenue generating sites. And, you can sort of draw a real clear line between fundamentally like, a law firm or a restaurant or a whatever that is well served by Webflow in its retail version. But then you have these revenue generating websites where we talked about, like, if that's down for an hour, you lose $1 million.
Yeah.
Like, So there, it's like, this is what enterprise is for. And the kinds of customer, and then we talked about, like, again, this customer that's like, we're going to spend $10 million on billboards, radio spots, LinkedIn ads, whatever. You can't you clearly understand the value of your demand gen investment. You can't under invest on the place they go once get an ad, a click through or whatever. So you just have to find the right clients. And a good friend of mine who's a photographer for years told me, he said that the difference between an amateur photographer and a professional photographer, uh, thinner than you realize. He said the only difference is that a professional photographer shoots more and shows less. So the idea that, like, on their website, I see these, like, beginning people, they're like, oh, we'll do marketing, and we'll do logo design, and we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do this. And it's like, let me show you all these different things. And I fell into that trap, Yanmei. I fell into that same trap as an early agency, where it's like, to get the business, you're working in Adobe, I'll work on that, or I'll do the brochure too. I'll do, because you're desperate for cash flow. And I had employees I had to pay, but that's like saying, hey, Yame, like, come to our pizza store. We also do oil changes for your car. It's like, or like, no, it's like, I take the Gordon Ramsay kitchen nightmares approach, like, for 20 seasons, he does the exact, every single failing restaurant is failing in exactly the same ways. And he goes in and they have a menu that's 30 pages long, and they try to do everything. Oh, we do Italian, and we do Chinese, and we do steak. So it's just like, it's really simple. 3 starters, 3 mains, 3 desserts. That's it. Just make the best meatballs in town, and make it so that people come from other cities to eat your meatballs. And if you don't want meatballs, then go somewhere else. Like, I'm not going to make a chicken curry. Like, I just do meatballs, but it's the best meatballs you're going to have. So the same idea of, like, shoot more, show less, like just be very narrow and specific. And again, some of the best advice I ever got is in early design. Like, one of my clients, for whom I did a lot of work, I did video work for him. I did branding work. I did product design for his labels. I did 3 of his websites. I mean, all of this stuff, right? He said, Nathan, you know what your problem is that you are broad professionally and narrow personally. And what he meant by that was, you have so many interests that you try to bring them at, like, oh, you're interested in product design, you're interested in video work, like, so you try to bring them as, like, professional services. But as a result, you're working 16-hour days, and you fall asleep, you wake up, and, like, you have no personal time for anything. He says, what you need to be is the reverse. You need to be narrow professionally so that you can be broad personally. And so the idea is that I just do this one thing. I do it fast, and I do it better than anyone. And so the idea that you come to me, if you want something else, I don't do those things. Like, in the US, I don't know how it is in Finland, but in the US, it's like, there's shops where, like, we just do brakes, or we just do transmissions. Like, you want to we just do transmissions. So, and they do great business. And so it's like, the idea they can in and out, so it's like, there's real value in finding a special niche, and people get really anxious as professional creatives. It's like, I want to do all these things, but, like, trust me, the more narrowly you focus, the better you will get at your craft, the more word will spread, and your business will grow in a meaningful way. So I think the same could also maybe be true for Webflow. It could be true for our practitioners and things. But if there's any advice I could give, or any guidance, like, some of the best professional guidance I ever gave was, be narrow professionally, find the niche. And in so doing, maybe your niche, to your point, is the people who do care about quality and craft and not speed.
Yeah,
and maybe that's your niche.
Totally. The niching topic. It's been a while since I've talked about it with anybody on the pod, but it is one of my favorite topics. But I have to do the one pushback niching always gets. It's like scary to declare that you do just one thing. Obviously, you are scared of losing clients and so on.
It is terrifying.
If someone has gone through that, they are on the other side, they have seen the light, and it's beautiful. They get to do less stuff, do better, solve the same problem again and again, and probably get more money out of that. But to get to that point, there's a road.
I will tell you two concrete examples of this working very successfully. I'll give you the first one is some of my agency experience before coming to Webflow, and then I'll give you an example from tennis, professional tennis. And I promise this will make sense. The first example is the company that I worked for, that they did political campaign websites. So like you're running for mayor, you're running for Congress, you're running for county commissioner, you're running for school board. I mean, in the US, I'm sure in Finland, like every 2 years, every 6 months, like there's always somebody running for something. And they're basically all the same, right? Like it's like, here's a smiling picture of my family. Here's the issues I care about. Here's a link to donate. Here's some photos, whatever. And it's that they just did campaign websites. Like that was their niche. But here's the thing is that like, guess what? I ran for mayor. I won. I have a re-election campaign. I come back to you again. And so they found this niche where they were printing money because it was all sort of, they made the same thing so many times. They had perfected it. And you could come to them and in days, you'd have like a full, and they had like really good design. Like, and if you looked at like their 500 websites that they'd done in the last 2 years, they had done it so, they had so many at bats, like that's a baseball term, right? Like so many chances to swing at the ball that they were doing like animation and background video and like all these things you wouldn't like think to do or would include. They were hiring custom illustrators and they were hiring custom photographer, like because they were focused in this lane, it freed them up to do this like really exceptional work. And from there, this really profitable, they were printing money, Yanni. They were hiring new people. They're like, oh, let's now go an adjacent, let's do law firms because all law firms are sort of the same. Let's do nonprofits because nonprofits are all about, here's our annual report, click here to donate. Hey, guess what? Click here to donate. It's the same thing as click here to donate for my political, like, so they could start. And now they have like, you know, a dozen specialties that all came from that like one profitable place. But each time they expanded, it was with less and less risk. And they've been really profitable the whole time. And so the example that I give is Rafael Nadal, who is the best player on red clay that the world has ever seen and will ever see. So if you're not familiar with tennis, there's 3 main surfaces. There's a hard court like concrete, there's grass like Wimbledon, and then there's red clay, a little bit of green clay here, but mostly red clay. 3 completely different surfaces. And for years, decades, if you were good on clay, the things that you needed to be good did not translate to grass and vice versa. So you have clay court specialists and you have grass court specialists. And then came Roger Federer. And he was just good at everything else. But you can't be Roger Federer. You can't be good on hard and clay and grass. So Nadal was not doing well on those other surfaces, but he won every single clay court tournament, like over and shattered all the records. And guess what? From that narrow position of strength, do you know what he started doing? Tinkering his game a little bit, getting a little better on grass here, a little better on grass there, until he won Wimbledon 3 times, beating Roger Federer, one of them. So I would suggest to you, it is terrifying. It is like I'm throwing caution to the wind, but I suggest to you that there are niches that are sufficiently broad that you're still able to do a lot of interesting things. And once you've got this like repeatable motion where, again, some of these oil change places, I pull in and in 10 minutes I pull out, and they're just, you know, and it's great. Now I know an oil change is not a website, but granted, but the idea that it's just like, get really, really good at a handful of things. And the better you are at that, the more profitable you'll be, I promise. And then from there, you can begin to choose more carefully and more strategically which other kinds of services and areas you want to go into. And I'm telling you, every company that's successful, they all follow that same playbook.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not thinking that are there those oil change places here in Finland.
Do they have those?
I know
Do they have those in Finland?
I believe there is at least one chain that does like only battery swaps for cars. But there might be one for oil changes too. Yeah, that's a little detour, but
I'm telling you, it's the same. Like find your niche that's underserved. It could be an industry, like we talked about, you know, campaign websites. It could be a technique, like I just do animation. Like you already have your website done. I'm just going to do, or just illustration. You're like, I promise there's something that you are drawn to that you're really good at, that you can shoot more and show less on your website, such that like I come to your website and it's like, Yanni's the best meatballs in town. You want meatballs? You go to Yanni. And if you want, you want a pizza, go so you want Chinese, go somewhere else, right?
Yeah, that is true, and that has been like age-old like advice for business. I'm
I
again
feel we've
thinking
gone really
that.
far afield here from Webflow, but hopefully something that
Yeah.
your listeners find interesting, right?
Before we get back, I'm thinking that maybe I should title this episode like "I promise this will make sense."
This,
Okay, let's
yeah, right. I love it. That's perfect. Right. Yeah. Or like
let's
you
get
want
back.
meatballs, talk to Yane, right? Like Yane is the best meatballs in
Yeah.
town. Yeah, no, call the episode the best
Uh,
meatballs in town.
I wonder what people would think. Oh yeah, let's take this back. There's at least one enterprise thing I want to talk about, and then we could end up with some like crystal ball gazing, what the future brings, like highly theoretical stuff. But about the enterprise, I saw that in one of those articles that was mentioned that 30% of enterprise clients already use some sort of agents with their production sites. So I'm curious, like, what do they do with those agents? What sort of jobs, and what are they asking more features, and what sort of features are they asking?
Yeah, excellent question. I'm not necessarily the best one to answer, but I can tell you the little that I know. Like there's all kinds. I mean, think of first of all, what is an agent, right? It's a chat prompt with some instructions. You know what I mean? So just kind of making it really simple. So like what are the instructions? Like what do you want it to do? I'll give you a good example. Let's say I have like an AEO agent and periodically it takes 50 prompts, 50 questions that I think people are asking about either directly about my company, like is Webflow good for design, or like what are the 5 best no code website build, whatever. And it just goes ahead and asks ChatGPT and asks Anthropic and asks Perplexity or whatever, and like gets a response back. And then sees that like, oh, my website's being cited for these questions. Like when someone asks a question, my page comes up. It's referenced, but maybe my competitors
Mm-hmm.
are actually being referred to instead. Well, what are they doing differently? Well, so then the agent will then in turn maybe examine that page and examine my page and be like, what you really should be like, give me like, here's some things you could do differently to increase your citation rate. And then next week it tells me I made that change. Maybe it even does the change for me, like writes the content or whatever. And then the next week it's like, oh yeah, our citation rate went up. Or, so that's like a real good concrete example of like an AEO agent that like can, like if you pay for Profound or, so I just had a class on this internally. Like here's like the top 10, SEMrush offers it, Ahrefs offers it. And there's a bunch of these like AEO kinds of things in the wild that you can do like one-off agents, but that's like a really good example, or like an agent that like scans for accessibility like issues, like WCAG accessibility, or I think provides an audit, or like even or maybe writes the alt tag for you if it's missing, or so there's all kinds of ways that we can automate some of this very difficult and historically under invested in work. And so you can write bots that'll do this stuff for you, and you can say, let's have a dashboard where it just shows me all the different more content freshness, like here's articles that like have historically had high traffic and then took a nosedive, or here's a page that here's the top 10 pages whose Lighthouse scores dropped below 90, and it just surfaces it auto, and then it gives you recommendations for, oh, your time to first contentful paint, or your whatever time to buy it in contentful, whatever, and like actually tells you, and maybe even fixes them. Maybe it's like, oh, this image was too big, I compressed it for you, so there's lots of fun, interesting ways that you can kind of approach the maintenance. And again, candidly, everything that I just mentioned, Yane, guess what? That's not at the build phase. That's
Yeah.
the post-launch market. So this is what I'm saying. It's like the business of the website so often is after launch. And Webflow, again, historically has not provided a lot of good tools for that, like the investments in optimize, the investments in analyze, the investments in localization. You might be thinking like, I'm never gonna use any of those things, whatever. I just want the best website builder. But I'm telling you, your clients do, or the right clients do, as far as like, how do I get, I just paid you $10,000 for this website. How do I get the most out of it? I'm going to have it. I'm not going to redo it again for 5 years or 10 years. Like, how do I make sure my investment is, so it's like, and maybe I need to invest some more or whatever. So, but the point is that like, I want to see a world crystal ball of like where Webflow is as good, I don't know what you call it, like as a tool for builders as it is for, let's just say marketers, forgive me. Like a tool is good, historically is good for them as it is for them. And you maybe don't care about that. if you're doing like law firm websites or restaurant, like these brochure sites, yeah, probably it doesn't really matter like what happens after launch. But for a lot of websites, the higher, like if you're a practitioner, like you make websites for a living and use Webflow, you want to start making money, you need to be making these websites. You need to be making the websites that are revenue generating, like the pro websites, because they matter so much more to the client. They're willing to invest more in them, which means they'll pay more. So, like we said last time, Yanni, like work that you've done for whatever dollar amount you paid for, I could probably guarantee there's a world where you do the exact same thing and get paid 5x just because the outcome of it matters that much more to that person, even if your work is excellent. Like there's an expression in English, pearls before swine, where it's like it means like I'm casting beauty in front of people who don't care about it. So it's like you maybe are doing excellent work for people who don't care, but you can do excellent work for people who do care and they'll pay you for it. So that's where Webflow wants to give you tools to move your business up market so that you can continue doing the good work that you're doing, that you enjoy doing, and make a lot more money doing it. So that's where a lot of these investments are coming from. Even if they don't seem like they matter to you now, they'll matter to you later.
Yeah. And even for the brochure sites, it would be good, it would be helpful and probably revenue generating if they would do some updates after the launch. So it's not like either or, everybody should take care of their sites. But I'm like curious or wondering how, if we are on board with that later part, what comes after the launch, and that's important too. How can we like in a way balance those? Because at this point, everything goes through the build phase. If there is a open feature where you can like pick and choose, that's well and good. But right now, it kind of goes through that build phase, and obviously the guys and girls who are building, I care more about that build phase. So I don't know. Is the answer to that just like make it open so people can pick whichever platform
it's both,
they want?
right? It's not either or. It's both and. So there's always going to be a world where like the existing current Webflow approach of like a, forgive me, like a locked down kind of like you kind of have to do it the Webflow way. There's a lot of people that's going to be completely fine from it. From the builder's perspective, you, the practitioner, to the client who's using it, like that's not going anywhere and it's only going to improve. So I think, again, part of what we'll see is that a lot of the investments that we're making in that process of building kind of in this manual way will continue to accelerate. And there's a lot of like under the hood investments that the teams have been making to accelerate the work of product teams so they can work faster and better. And I'll give you a really good example. There was some update I saw internally where some engineering leader was like, hey, one of the frustrating things for people who work on the Webflow core project is like, you'd click a button to like ship your feature and you'd have to wait like 30 minutes for it to like fit whatever. He's like, we got that down to like 13. So even just like the frustration of like, shipping things. So those things you're never going to see or hear about or whatever, but like, those kinds of things matter internally because it's like, okay, now like me as the person making or shipping the Webflow feature, if it's frustrating for that person, then it's all just going to be air dragged, to keep you from really moving fast. So I think that there's a world, if I understood your question, forgive me, I may not have, but like there's a world where this, like you still go through the build phase. And like, I think that's going to continue getting better and better and better and better in the ways that you'd expect it to and that it always should have been, which doesn't take away from what other kinds of cool opportunities can we explore. So like, I think you're going to have it both ways is sort of what I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know.
I may not have gotten your question.
I'm not sure if there was a question, but
well, good. Then there's no way to get it wrong.
Yeah. It was just some thoughts about like this balance of those things. Obviously, we need both, but I get the reason why the build phase in history has been like the one to focus on because it has been the one that everybody goes through. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be the hardest anymore. And so that's where it's like, okay, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we abandoned it. It just means what other opportunities does it create, I guess is the answer.
Yeah. Now towards more hypothetical things. If we should do this again, like within a year, as you said, then we will know. But what do you think, like, how has the field progressed? And I'm actually a bit curious about like specific part of the field, which are those like simpler build tools like Squarespace, Wix. I hear that Wix has some financial troubles right now. So what do you think is the future of those and maybe the field in general?
I think it's bleak. I feel badly. Wix is a public company, so all of their financials are laid bare, and they think they laid off like 1,000 people, which is I don't know. I think that they're going to have to really go back to the drawing board in some ways. I haven't heard much from Squarespace. I think was Squarespace bought by like a private equity company. I forget what their like status is or whatever, but I don't know. I always thought of Squarespace as like a template thing where I can just like pick a template and then just make some basic content modifications. I never thought of it as like a website builder. It's more like a website chooser. Maybe that's wrong. I know you can do some kind of basic things or whatever, but I don't think that was ever like the core reason that people like my buddy who like has a band. He like has a square like he's just picking a template and it's like, here's our tour dates. Like he doesn't care about any of the modifications he can do or whatever. But Wix, I think Wix had its studio, had other things. I guess if the question is like, what happens to them? I mean, probably the same thing that happens to Webflow's core retail business, and it should not come as any surprise that like more people are turning toward. I can just sort of like vibe code something. So what do I need Webflow for? And depending on the use case, that's fine. Like if you just do it, like again, if you're just like a band website or something, like yeah, you can just vibe code it, deploy it to Vercel. You don't need Squarespace or Webflow or anything because like the stakes just don't matter. Like if it goes down, who cares? It's like there's no personal information that can be hacked. Like I just think there's like where does the value lie? I think, and this happens so much with any kind of technology shift, or is just like it used to be that I don't know, like cars or whatever. Like the value used to be that like you knew how to drive a stick shift, or cars are just like appliances now. You just get in and push a button and it goes. So it's like the value is not in the value just shifts, right? So it's like if there's no longer a need to hire Yanne to like design a site or whatever, ethical quandaries aside about like whose work was consumed and scraped and trained on to do that. Like again, just put that's a whole different conversation, but just put a pin in that for the moment. Environmental concerns likewise. But just assuming that OpenAI exists in 12 months, which I don't think it will, but maybe we have some cheap local Chinese models that we run on device, whatever. Just the point is, assume that things continue as they are. Then it's like, well, what can't people do for themselves that a human being is required to do? And so it just, those things just become more valuable. So I think we can have a conversation of like, well, what would you, maybe you need help getting people to your site. Now that you have a website, you still only have 10 visitors a month. So maybe the value is in how do I drive traffic, or how do I write content, or it's like, I'm not like necessarily suggesting like, oh, these are all the things it shifts to, but just the value shifts to a different domain and you can just be very successful over here. So I don't know where the value will shift to. I have a feeling that the direction Webflow is headed is where the value will shift to, but we'll see after conf. But I don't know how they're going to adapt. I think it's going to be a real rocky road for the Squarespaces and Wixes of the world for the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah. I'm kind of like on board with that prediction. I know that there might be still like people who wanna do little site without AI, or they do not wanna try out some vibe coded tools. And for example, Squarespace, as you said, it's kind of like a template chooser. You can drag and drop like sections and so on and edit, or you have to edit like the contents, and that might be like a best case scenario.
It'll shrink. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I have my own personal thoughts, on like agents and AI, just separately from my professional work. But I think there's always going to be an appetite for people who like go out of their way to avoid AI completely, entirely.
Yeah.
So the businesses will contract. They'll maybe they'll grow slower, or maybe they'll actually shrink, and there'll be like a new normal in terms of like the limits of what they can expect to, like the size of the market that they can expect to hit. Because if 60% of the market goes to AI or is comfortable with it, then the 40% who remains are going to remain loyal, but now it's 40% of what it would have been, so Yeah, I don't really know. Those are some blanks that I really have no insight into, or like, but again, well, just the same thing we talked about last time, where regardless of technology, regardless of like, what are the fundamentals, like what are the things that matter across time and space, and it's just like, again, Amazon saying 10 years from now, people aren't going to want a smaller selection. 10 years from now, people aren't going to want slower delivery. So it's like HTML, CSS, JavaScript are going to be here in 10 years still, and people are still going to be able to like deploy to a server somewhere with a bunch of static files that are basically just rendered HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So how we get there is going to change. The mechanism changes, but like also the question is like, what's the point? Right? Like we're so much talking about like the tooling and the means and the workflows and like, you know, the build processes, but it's like, what's the point? The point is that I want people to see me. I want to be seen. I want to see others. I want to connect with other people. I want to connect with their humanity. I want to connect with their work, their words, their music, their products, their vision, their inspiration. Like fundamentally, it's all still just a medium for human connection. If I'm going to a restaurant website, it's because I want to have an experience of a candlelit dinner with an excellent meal. My wife took me out to dinner. I went to my first Michelin star restaurant in Chicago. It was 8 courses, and I was 2.5 hours. My butt was numb, but it was the best meal I ever had. Like,
Yeah.
like, do you think I care about the website? No, it's just like, what's the point of the website? It's to connect with people. And if I'm selling you something, it's because, again, like I'm offering something in the world that you care about or need or want or inspired by or are fulfilled by or whatever. And I mean, you can talk about it in like a crassly, you know, commercial motive, but I still think the foundation of the web is like human connection. And that's going to become more important than ever. I think communities become more important than ever. Conversations become more important than ever. Patience and understanding become more important than it's education. There's so much misinformation, disinformation, that the people who can become like reputable, trustworthy, you know, credible, become more important as leaders, as guides and things. So I don't know. Again, like I have an education in the humanities, so it's like this is where my mind always goes back to. It's like we can talk about technology all day, but it just comes down to people, you know.
Yeah, that is a beautiful closing thought. Yeah, that's great. And again, I'm totally with you. Like, what is this? What is this all for? It's good to ponder about that from time to time. Okay, as you know, there's one more thing, but before that, Nathan, where can people find you? I know that since the last time you are more active on social media. So
I did create, or I don't know, undelete my LinkedIn, but I do not recommend
I'm sorry,
following.
I feel responsible for that.
Yeah, you know, again, I do not recommend following. It's just a bunch of really terrible, snarky jokes. I sort of treat LinkedIn as like an open mic night where I try out new material and see what lands. I can't take any of it seriously, and it's just a lot of, you know, it's sort of like let's come back to the Matrix, because I mentioned that already earlier once in the call. It's like in the Matrix, when Neo first is getting a tour from Morpheus, they get in their hovercraft and they like have to go up high enough in the sewers to where they can hack into the Matrix, like they can broadcast this in, because they're like deep in the earth and they're just too far away. So it's like they surface a little bit so that they can broadcast their signal to hack into the Matrix.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit like LinkedIn is that for me, where it's like I'm surfacing a little bit to like hack into the Matrix, where I can sort of like, you know, throw anti-capitalist bombs and stupid jokes or whatever. I'll give you a good example. So like I understand all of the hand wringing and concern about data centers, but honestly, I take a lot of inspiration from them, because I too, like data centers, am trying to consume as much water and literature as possible and frustrate my local planning council with my unconventional land use. So, you know, I feel like there's hope for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Again,
Please don't follow me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
okay, to the last section, which is obviously the weird Finnish section. So, if there's someone in this deep end not familiar with this thing, what follows is that I will give Nathan a Finnish saying, and he has to like come up with the meaning, like guess what that saying means. So Nathan, are you ready for your saying?
I'm ready. I completely got it wrong last time, so let's hope I get it right this time.
Yeah. Okay. This is a funny one, but I feel like there's a logic behind this one, so there's a chance for you. So in Finnish, it is eteenpäin sanoi mummo lumessa, and translated to English, it is forward said the granny in the snow, and it is usually used just like that without anything attached to it. So what does it mean if I said forward said the granny in the snow?
I feel like the reason people get these wrong so often is because you want to go to the obvious meaning, but there's usually like a subtext, right? Like a hidden implied meaning. So the explicit meaning would be forward says the granny in the snow means like things are hard, but we have to keep on pushing forward. Like it's an encouraging statement, like keep at it, good job. But I feel like that's too easy. So I'm going to say forward said the granny in the snow means that you peed in your pants and you need to go inside and change.
Well, that's a guess. Yeah, I'll have to get it myself. But yeah, it was the first one. It was easy answer.
Okay, so,
yeah.
All right. Do I get partial
keep
credit?
on going.
Right. Keep on going. So I wanted to also point out to Janne that like it occurred to me that you do this little exercise at the end of the conversation, and like in a race, you get to the finish line. So I thought you should say this is the finish line. That's how you should call your segment.
That's clever. Totally. Finish line.
Because it is a line that you have to translate, right?
Yeah. That's a clever little word play. Oh yeah, I'm gonna use that. Okay, yeah. But that covers it. Thank you, Nathan, so much for being a guest again. And for all the listeners and watchers, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Cheers. Thank you.